everyone, and welcome to the Tavern Keeper. My name is Chris Barron. This is an interview series about brewery taprooms, their design, their decor, and the community that we build within. Joining me today is a good friend of mine, co-founder, co-owner of Big aLICe Brewing Company, Kyle Hurst. How's it going, man?
Hi, Chris. All right.
How are you doing in our brave new world thus far, beer-wise and non-beer-wise?
I guess as well as can be expected. I have my health, my family all has theirs, and that's probably the most important thing any of us can look for in these times. But my mental sanity is hanging by a thread. But so far so good.
As it goes, yeah, indeed. It's good. It's nice. Beyond working on this series, it's nice to reconnect with friends. Just because it's been tricky. I totally agree. I desperately miss people. I consider myself a people person. I know you're the same, and it's hard not to have contact outside.
It's been hard to I want to just drop in and say hey to people. I don't get out that often. It's about every 3 days, 4 days, depending on kind of what's going on, if I have to get into the brewery or not. But on the way home, I want to stop at Fifth Tavern. I want to stop at Rockaway, just check in and say hey and see how everybody's doing. But I know it's not a good idea, so I don't.
Yeah.
But it's hard, being the social beings we all are. I think that's kind of the one common thread all of us have in this industry. Even the introverts over a beer, we have something in common that we can share.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's been tricky. It's a very communal industry, as we've explored. So talk to me a little bit about Big aLICe. What Big aLICe does, what Big aLICe is. I applaud you guys so much for being a really, really fabulous communal brewery. Your beer is super accessible but super fun. It's a wonderful conversation piece. But also your space and the way you partner with local vendors and stuff is really, really fabulous. So yeah, just give me your piece about what you guys do.
You kind of hit on it. From the very beginning, for us, it's been about community. We started out, even in our name, Big aLICe. When we opened, there were still only a dozen or so breweries in New York City, and we kicked around some ideas of some different names, and New York City themed names were too big for us. Even Queens Brewery was available at the time. They weren't in the works yet, but that even felt too big. So Big aLICe, it turned out, is actually a local landmark right in our neighborhood, and we were so small. I mean, we're small now. We were really small then. And it was important to us to have like a neighborhood reference because that was really what we wanted to be is your neighborhood brewery, not kind of nationally craft breweries have turned into that, which is great. I'm thrilled for that.
Yeah.
But at the time, it while it was still growing and there was a moment in time where we thought we missed the curve. But I'm glad we were wrong on that. I thought we were open late and maybe we missed our opportunity. But
yeah,
so it was important to us, at our size, to be the spot in the neighborhood, in the community, and as a result, from the very beginning, we've been partnering with local producers, vendors, and then we can source locally. We do. If something's not grown locally, we try to source from a local vendor. We've had some relationships from the very beginning, going back 7 years now, with Tom Wilk, who's our beekeeper. We sponsor a beehive with him, so we get honey for a honey wit and different beers that we've done. Annually, we do our Pride beer that comes out in June, and that has honey in it. And so there's a lot of things with that, and I guess probably the second longest, or maybe they're around the same time. Is Native Roasters, who's coffee isn't grown in New York State, but it's we found coffee roasted in Long Island City. So we've been working with Brian over there for since the very beginning. Actually, since both of them since before we opened to the public. So those are things that over time we've kind of grown that out to work with. We source our lemongrass, which is one of our most popular beers, from a Flushing Thai grocer. She's the sweetest woman I've ever met in my life, and she always has a gift for me whenever we come in to pick up our order, and it's
so
great.
Nice.
And kind of having relationships with them, and then kind of on the state level with our hop farmers and our maltsters and things like that has been a very important part of who and what we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you guys started off as sort of a CSB model without a proper tap room, or we'll say brick and mortar where you can visit and spend a substantial amount of time, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of see where we are today with 2 locations and kind of 2 different methods of operation in our 2 locations to look at where we started and really what we intended to do when we started. At the very beginning, it was me and another home brewer who we had the idea to we were brewing once a month. I lived upstate, he lived in Brooklyn, and once a month we worked together. We'd drive home together on Friday night, we'd brew all weekend and drive back to work together on Monday morning. So we got the idea that we would continue that, but instead of making 5-gallon batches, we would make 10 and sell 5 to the public, still keep 5 for ourselves. So in essence, keep doing what we were doing and just have everybody else pay for our hobby. That's really all we set out to do. It was never certainly we had hoped and thought that at some point it'd be great if this actually grew into something that could be a business for us. But we were working our day jobs. We were still going to work during the week. Still working brewing 1 weekend a month from Friday to Monday. Just we were doing it in Queens instead of going back back upstate to my house.
Yeah. And you so people would come. Do you have a formal membership, or you just sell whatever you had?
The way it worked was great. I wish we could still do it this way today. So we had a finite number of memberships. I remember it was 50 or 100. It was 100 people at a share, kind of like a CSA share. A CSB share was $200, and for your $200, you got two bottles a month for 6 months. So and we did it. It wasn't like you could sign up at any point and your 6 months began then, because we only had capacity to make so much beer. We ran January to June, July to December, and then started again January to June, and kind of in the 5th month you had the opportunity to renew. Mm-hmm. Anybody who didn't renew, like in the 6th month, those would become available to the public. And the first time we did it was mostly friends, family. If you when we opened to the public, there was, I don't remember exactly, but 15 or 20, still left. But then by the second round, people who were doing it just to support us. And a lot of those first ones were people who really cared about the beer. They just were happy to give us a couple $100 to help us get started. But then over time, all of those, friends were replaced with, actual customers, and we had a waiting list, so that the list was getting longer and longer. So by the time we had our 3rd renewal, we had a few hundred people who were waiting to get in this, and we got the idea, that we should, either we got to figure out a way to make more beer, or we need a bigger brew house, and look to make that leap. So that's where we ended up. So, and by the way, I started out with, I had a kind of good lighting. Now I'm getting a reflection off the building.
You look great. It looks, it's very artistic, actually. I'm very happy with it.
I don't know. It can't hurt, right?
It's artistic.
But anyway, so we had this waiting list, and we decided at that point. So that was, I think, our 3rd round. So we were 18 months in after we opened, and we actually brewed for 6 months before opening. So we had 2 years in production, 1.5 years open to the public is when we pulled the trigger. Bought a brew house from a brew pub in Connecticut, in Stamford, that was not renewing their lease. So we were able to kind of come in. We got the brew house. It was a brew pub, so there were serving tanks, fermenters, rights, everything, pumps, mill, the auger, everything was turnkey for one price. All we had to do was, get it rigged out of there. And it turns out my business partner owns an HVAC company that works with riggers all the time. So we had the resources available to us and the connections, because I think they were calling their landlord's bluff. And he wasn't bluffing. So, but by the time we saw it, we had 2 weeks to kind of make them the offer, get them the funds, and get the equipment out of there.
Jeez.
So they're like, all right, everything you see that's brewery related, is yours for the price. You just got to get it out of here. and there was some stuff that even wasn't brewery related. Like, hey, can we take this? We take that, and some of it we used, others we didn't. But
Yeah.
you know, it was kind of like an episode of American Pickers. We were just going through grabbing everything that looked like it had any value at all.
That's cool.
But
That's cool.
so we got that. It was probably 4 or 5 months it took us to kind of get that installed and operational. And at that point was when I quit my day job, started full time at the brewery. John, who's now our head brewer, became our first full time employee. We joked that he's employee 001. So he's been with us from.
You guys are still doing 10-gallon batches while this was going on, yeah?
Yeah, so we kind of finished up our last round of CSB. While we started, because I think it was like around October, November. I think was when we started brewing on the 5-barrel system. But meanwhile, because we were bottle conditioning, everything kind of had like all of our large format bottles had about a 2-month cycle or 3-month cycle. So we brew. So everything kind of happened in stages. So 1 month we'd take everything that was that we brewed. We'd go into fermenters. I think it was in the fermenters from the previous month. We'd go into secondaries. They got a month in secondary. Everything that was in the secondaries was going into a bottling bucket, and then from the bottling it was going into bottles, and then they were conditioned for a month. So from the day we brewed it, on a brew day you had to work in reverse because we had to clear up the secondaries to get the primaries moved over to secondaries. We had to clear up the primaries to get the brewers moved in. So we did 8 batches, a weekend, but we double mashed for every single batch. So I mean, we did 16 batches to make 8 beers in 2.5 days. Back then we were open. Our tap room, which was really a tasting room and a spot to pick up your CSB, we were open 2.5 hours a week. So we were open from 5 to 7:30, 1 day a week on Friday, and by 7:30 we were kind of rolling the last people out the door and looking to start heating the water for that first batch for the weekend.
So when you had that that was your medium, were there people who came to pick up their beer and they wanted to hang and they sort of were yearning for that have a beer together environment?
So we didn't have a tap room at that point. I know that's the focus of the conversation tonight, but at the point it was we had this kind of really remedial setup. So we didn't have a bar. We had like a room where you would walk in, and it was this old, kind of really gorgeous European door that had been converted into a table. It has all this intricate design, and it was beautiful. It was a showpiece. Like it was like you walked in the room, that was all that was in the room.
This is the space in aLICe that you occupy today.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Before the space that is now our tap room. Yeah. At that in those early stages. It was just the room was completely enclosed. Now it's kind of partially open. That goes into the brewery, and there was actually like a door there that you couldn't get in. We can close the door to kind of separate the two spaces. And we had typically 3, 4, 5 bottles that weren't pre-sold as part of the CSB that we had available to sell. So on a weekend we'd have 20 bottles that we could sell. So people would come in to pick up their CSB. Other people would come in to either pick up a bottle or two, or whatever we had available, and until we'd open one and just pour out like a taste. So it was a 750 we'd get, and we were doing like 1 ounce taste. So we'd get 20, 25 tastes out of that bottle, and but back then we only got about 48, 50 bottles of any one beer. That's
a percentage.
So to open one up to pour a sample was we were losing 2% of our yield every time we did that.
That's a non-negligible percentage of your batch.
Yeah,
I do 1 gallon batches at home sometimes, and I'm like, what? If I want to even test the gravity, like
when I was home brewing, even at a 5-gallon scale, I would sanitize my hydrometer and the flask and everything, and I would dump it back in.
Yeah.
You hate to lose even a couple of ounces. I know exactly what you're saying, and that's exactly how we were operating at the beginning. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's amazing. That's a really cool grassroots way to build community and to lay the groundwork.
Yeah, it was great. And like I talked a little bit about the name, and people would come in and the people who knew, what Big aLICE is and not who Big aLICE is was, they felt like they were on the inside of an inside joke. And it wasn't a joke as much as like people who are from Long Island City, know what it is. And there's a lot of us who moved to Long Island City. And had I not, done the research and tried to, come up, with a name for the brewery, I wouldn't have known it either. So, for people who have been around Long Island City, for their whole lives and know what Big aLICE is, I think they appreciate it. And some of them even like to be real smarty pants and tell us that we spelled it wrong, which I'm aware that we spelled it wrong. I wouldn't say we spelled it wrong. We spelled it differently. In part because I wasn't sure if a nickname was public domain or not. And you can't capitalize the aLICE in a word that doesn't include it.
The way you do it is, I think, really accessible and really smart to get that aLICE in there. And also it adds this layer of it's not exclusive to folks who live in Long Island City necessarily. People can come and they learn. If you learn the piece of history, all of a sudden you're part of it. It's not like you're excluded from this. So I think that's the way to go. It's awesome.
I think that's nice. One of the great things about breweries in general is anywhere you go, and there's probably a couple exceptions out there, but anywhere you go, it's all about kind of inclusivity and you're kind of being a part of whatever's going on there. Like it's you feel a part of whatever brewery you're at, and I know you've been to a bunch of tap rooms, and I have too, and I think if you didn't have that feeling when you walk someplace, probably they're not going to do well, and you're not going to enjoy your experience there. Yeah,
the more you go to, the more you develop a radar for that.
Yeah, you can identify pretty quickly.
Yeah. I was telling Kuzma in the last episode, there are a lot, I remember a lot of breweries that have defining characteristics physically, but I truly the breweries I remember are the ones, the breweries / bartenders, beer tenders I remember are the ones that are really having a conversation with you, even if they're slammed, it's that's the name of the game. And that's when I started going to breweries, the Big aLICE was one of the first ones I went to, and it was sold immediately. Sold on Big aLICE. I remember Bronx was one of the first that was sold on Bronx. It was sold on Gun Hill, sold on Rockaway because of the people that served me beer. It was really awesome.
I think most people in this industry, they're on a second life or third.
Yeah, legit.
But it's nobody's doing it because they have to do it. Like a lot of places, you get a job, it's the only job you could get. You're like, I'll do this. I think the people who are working in this industry are doing it because they want to. Most people, or many people, could be probably making more money doing something else.
Yeah, if you're trying to make a killing, you're in the wrong.
Yeah. I remember shortly after we opened, Garrett Oliver had published a piece about how there's no money in craft beer. My wife said to me, "Is this accurate?" I said, "Yeah." Did you think we were going to make money? But
it's kind of cool.
I make less than I used to, but I'm much happier than I ever was. So that's worth something.
Yeah, I can't speak to the finance. So obviously, I don't own a brewery, and I've never been through the business of it. But there is something to be said for if you throw the idea of unlimited wealth out the window. If you have a good business plan, you're worth your salt, and your people are good, you're going to make certainly enough money to grow. But if you throw out the idea of like how much money can we make, then you're able to kind of clean the slate to focus on things like community and quality and what do we actually want to do. I know you guys partner with a ton of charities and with regards to your events in the past, which is really great because there are a lot of breweries that make great beer, but that's what that's all they do. It's make great beer, and that's cool. But why not make great beer and also use that as a calling card to better the world? I think Big aLICE does a really wonderful job with that, and I think it's it's missing with a lot of really great breweries otherwise that could be even greater.
Yeah. It started with one of our first employees. I mentioned John earlier. It was either our second or third employee was Larissa. I believe Larissa as well. But so she and John actually came to me and said, we want to take one night a month and donate all of our tips to a charity. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, what?
No.
I'm like, of course. And how can we help and make it a thing? So. we used to do something called libations and donations, where we did a different charity, once a month. We don't do it that frequently, but we try to do it bigger because we're doing it less frequently now. But we do beers as fundraisers, we do events as fundraisers, and we try to spread as much as we can, spread the love as much as we can to as many things. But we find ourselves supporting the arts, primarily, and then other local charities as situations arise.
That's awesome. So cool. Tell me a little bit about, so you made the shift from CSB to you upgraded the brew house to the 5-barrel, and you had to build a tap room. You're going to build a tap room. What was that construction like?
Yeah, so when we went to build out the space, like I said, it's in New York City, it's about cubic footage, not square footage. So we had to use as little space as we could, for the bar. So there was enough room for 2 people to be behind there, and that was about it, because we only had a really maybe 300 square feet. I don't know what it is exactly. I should probably measure it, but it's a very small space. But we also wanted it to be a space where you wanted to hang out and could hang out, and we don't have the spacious tap room that some others, but we want it to be just as warm and inviting as large tap room in our small cozy, quaint space, if you will. So when we were designing the space, it was important to us to kind of pay homage to our roots, and the CSB model and everything. We talk about the large format bottles. Those were corked and hand tied with champagne knots. And the new brew house was copper, so we kind of wanted to tie the new with the old. So our new tap room, when we opened it, was cork and copper. So what was cork flooring actually is on the walls, kind of like a wainscoting, kind of halfway up. And then there's a copper rail. The bar top was copper, and we had the option of having it sealed so that it wouldn't age. And we've made the conscious decision not to, because we wanted to kind of get its own patina, and we knew beer was going to be spilled on there, and being a brewer, that there's different pHs and to different beers, so they're going to stain it a little bit differently. And it's one of the decisions I was really kind of pleased at when you come in and kind of at the end of the night, there's just different kind of colors of rings all over the bar top and the rail, and so it was kind of a cool space. And I like that we had the cork in there to kind of bring back our all of our early beers. I don't miss tying those knots. We could have done corks and cages, and it probably would have been a whole lot easier, but it wasn't. Everything we did was so hands-on and artisanal. We felt the bottle should reflect that. So that's why we did that at the very beginning. But when we designed the space, we only had a little bit of space to work with, but we wanted to make it warm, welcoming, but also kind of be true to who we are. And because the space is so small, we could have redone it and made it immaculate, and really for a song it wouldn't have taken much at all because the space is so small. But kind of the really cool thing about the breweries, in New York City and Long Island City specifically, is we all have this very kind of industrial space that we're in. So you kind of want to embrace that, and I think that's kind of what makes breweries cool. And traveling, when you go to breweries, kind of throughout the country and the world, really, it's kind of whatever space was available is what they moved into. And in most cases, I've been to firehouses, in different warehouses, and kind of like the really kind of cool elements are the ones that were left behind, from whatever was there before. I think of Keegan's up in Kingston. I don't know if you've been up there.
No.
But it was some kind of warehouse where there's this huge chain pulley system that they just pushed to the side and left there. It's like when you walk in, like you see this thing, and there's and it's alongside the stage. I think they have one like in the bathroom. If you go to the bathroom, it's still kind of hanging in there.
That's awesome.
It's just these things, these all of these elements from whatever previous life the building had. the brewery has, and I think that kind of speaks to, like I was saying earlier, where we all kind of had previous lives, and but there's still elements of our previous life and our current life, and I think that's evident in our tap rooms as well.
Yeah. Do you know what that building was before, the aLICE tap room?
So the space we're in is owned by an HVAC company, and the first time we went to see the space, and I'll have a bunch of pictures for you. It's kind of a really cool transformation this space took, because it was an old paint shop, so the walls were caked in layers of paint. There was 3 days of sandblasting to get down to. We wanted to see the brick, and if you're not looking for it, you don't notice. But if next time you're in our space, if you take a look, there are still fragments of paint, kind of
cool.
in the deeper, pieces of the brick. But the drawing of the space, first time we got it, was labeled Bible Room. So when we went in the space, there was no electric, there was no plumbing, there were no doors, no windows, no skylights, none of the stuff that you see there today. So it was a brick box. It had only recently gotten a floor. It was like a dirt floor until a few months before we got in there. I actually had to climb on top of pallets of Bibles with a tape measure to kind of measure the room to figure out, could we work in this space and is it enough space? And that was one of the names we considered early on, was Bible Room Brewery, because that's the space we were moving into.
That's amazing.
There were three of us at the beginning. One was Jewish, one was Christian, one was an atheist, which, they kind of ruled out the Bible Room piece of it. But I like the idea of punchline, because that sounds like the beginning of a joke, right?
Yeah.
A Jew, a Christian, and an atheist open a brewery. I'm still working on the punchline, but I think that would be.
But the setup is real promising.
But yeah, so
That's cool.
space, I was just walking our taproom manager, Orlando, yesterday. He and I were kind of just walking on the space, and I was showing him the cuts in the floor, which you don't notice if you're not looking for. But when we moved in, like I said, there was no plumbing, no electricity. We had to cut up the concrete to put in drains and water supplies. And
that's an ordeal here.
All of that stuff. And I've got pictures from the building where we put in the electrical box. There was no electrical in the space. And, we could see the framework on the ceiling for the skylights. I'm like, hey, can we get skylights? And the landlord was like, yeah. I'm like, great. And there's so much natural light in there. During the day, often we don't even have the lights on.
That's wonderful.
And I think all of those elements kind of play into the feel that our tap room has today.
Yeah, the skylights are one of my favorite aspects of your tap room. I think those are really cool. Can you think of was there a tap room or a brewery that sort of sold you on the industry that maybe you visited before you started in business? So
I'm not from New York originally. I'm from Wisconsin, and I moved to New York in 2008. When I moved out here, we lived in Westchester County. We were in this Bermuda Triangle. We were Chappaqua Schools. It was Armonk Fire and Rescue, and we had a Mount Kisco address. But at the time, Captain Lawrence Brewery was still in Pleasantville. They're now in Elmsford, but they were probably similar in size then to what we are today. But so as a home brewer, I looked for a local homebrewing club. I joined the Westchester Homebrewers Organization, the WHO, as they call themselves, who met at Captain Lawrence, and their original tap room was probably similar in size to what our current one is. At that point in time, and this was 2008, 2009, this tap rooms still weren't legal, to serve beer. Those laws didn't change until 2012 or so, 2013 maybe.
So,
I don't know if you were at Rockaway when they were still doing the tokens. Which
I visited. I didn't work there then, but I visited back when you get a ticket or you get a glass and there's beer in your glass. Drink it.
So breweries weren't allowed to sell you beer in their tap rooms, but you could drink samples for 6 hours, which is what I did at Captain Lawrence. So for me, it was Captain Lawrence, and being a home brewer, they had this really kind of small, intimate tap room, which had a door you could walk through, and then you were in their brewery, and I could sit there and drink a beer and lean on a fermenter, and I don't know if you noticed, those are things you can do in our space today, and those are all really, really cool, important things to me. When I was still on the customer side of the craft beer industry, that I wanted to bring to our own space when we opened. And part of it was out of necessity, but I think that we're trying to find a way, even if we had a bigger space, to let, to introduce people into the production side of it in an intimate way like we have done.
That's awesome. That's cool. So you guys, on the flip side of intimacy, you guys have had great demand for your beer and your product, so you expanded, I believe. How long ago did the barrel room open up?
So it's April. So February was a year that we were open in Brooklyn.
Down in Industry City, right?
So Industry City in Sunset Park. It's run by Jamestown Properties, which is the same people that did Chelsea Market.
Okay.
So you'll kind of see similar elements if you come to Industry City to what Chelsea Market has. So there's kind of a production element alongside a retail element on all the ground floors, and then it's kind of office and studio spaces, upstairs. So it's a lot of creatives, which is kind of really cool. And then I think most of the people that work with us are creative in some way. We have musicians, we have artists, we have photographers, we've got actors, we've got a lot of kind of creatives in our ranks. And I think for me, beer was my medium. I don't consider myself an artist, but that was what my outlet was. Prior to this was I always joke I started homebrewing before it was cool, because I started homebrewing in the late '90s. So I was that weird guy who was making his own beer. But it's kind of this cool space that it took us about 15 months from the time we saw it until we opened. And then from the time we opened until now, it's been about 14, months. So, we were able to have our 1-year anniversary party, and we did some live music. And Matt Susich was one of our employees, an amazing musician. We did a beer collaboration with him where we named a beer after his album. And
$1,000 dinners,
Yes, $1,000 dinners for sure. And we're going to throw a big one when we're all able to go back to work.
Indeed.
So look out for that.
Yeah, I love both spaces. I love that space. It's really cool. It's very clean, but it's still got a lot of character, and it again finds that wonderful balance that both of your spaces have. I love that you can do events there. I love that it's this cool U-shaped space where you can have music, and you can still be in the space, and maybe you're not. Maybe you don't want to have music in your face, and you can still exist in that space, and the music is in the background. Which is really, really great.
Kind of everything we can't do in Queens, is kind of what we solved for with that location.
Yeah.
So we moved into a space that was designed for a 10-gallon brewery in Queens, and now we're doing about 1,000 barrels a year.
Yeah.
But we're about 3 times the square footage of that in Brooklyn, and with no production equipment. We have barrels over there. We've got so we're doing all of our barrel aging over there. It's called the barrel room. And we do packaging over there, but we're not doing any brewing over there. So it opens up space. We included a stage, so we do live music. I think prior to things hitting the brakes here or being put on pause, to use the governor's word, we were doing live music. I think about 3 nights a week, 2 to 3 nights a week. We were also doing Drag Queen bingo. We're doing trivia. We're hosting all kinds of private events, birthday parties, corporate events. So all of the things that we can't do in Queens because the space is too small, we're doing there. And like you said, we can be doing them and something else, live music or whatever, because the space is big enough, and it's kind of partitioned in a way where in our barrel aging area we can have kind of a more private, intimate space, and we do some tasting, some things back there. Well, there might be live music going on the stage, or trivia, or other things. And we've had corporate events in the back while trivia was going on, so we can have a multi-purpose space, in the Brooklyn location that we can't always do in Queens.
Yeah, it's super versatile. I love that you can have multiple design elements that really come together. It feels like a really unified space design wise. You've got parts that are like diamond plated paneling on the walls. You've got parts that are like behind your tap list. There's this really cool kind of thatch wiring that has that kind of that diamond that shows up in your logo too, which is kind of cool. There's the white tiling, which reminds me of Milk and Hops, and a lot of really fabulous beer bars and bottle shops. It's like, but it all comes the hell together. It's really great.
Yeah, we were fortunate where, you know, we worked with the design team at Industry City, and we kind of just threw at them like everything we love, what all places that we go to.
Yeah.
You know, we like the tiling. Like we like white, clean tile in the background. We want, because it's a barrel, we wanted to include as much wood elements as we could. So we look at a lot of oak everywhere. The bar top is all reclaimed wood. The stage, there's kind of an accent wall behind the stage. You know, the tables were custom built by a company in New Jersey that we worked with, and the artist who did the mural. The mural is kind of this cool thing that's kind of omnipresent, but also, you know, not really front of mind, which is kind of cool. So if you go there when it's empty, you take in the whole mural. Kind of one end of it is Big aLICE, the power plant. So you kind of get the one end is the power plant, and then the kind of on the other end of the mural is what is Industry City today, and then in between, the buildings, and then in between is the old Kosciuszko Bridge, which connects Brooklyn and Queens. So you kind of our Queens element, our Brooklyn element, and a bridge between the two of them. And when the mural was being done, it was kind of around the time the new Kosciuszko was opening, and like it's such a new modern design that didn't really fit the motif. So it's actually the old Kosciuszko when you take a look at it.
Nice. That's great.
So we try to include elements. Like I said, you get the diamond element there. You've got the diamond plate, which actually, if you look around our spot in Queens, we have a lot of diamond plate there. So we wanted to tie the two to even though they're very different, we wanted them to have, a common look and feel and just kind of a vibe and to the aesthetic. I know Chris Kuzmi mentioned it on his episode with you that the people kind of defined what the space is going to be at the end of the day. So we designed it for what we wanted it to, how we wanted it to feel. But the people, our guests are very different in the two locations. They're two very different neighborhoods, which has kind of been a experience for us as we've kind of adapted to how we operate in the two locations.
Nice. But it is nice. It is cool, especially within the 5 boroughs, that it's accessible to visit both. You have a lot of people who live in the city or not, or able to visit both relatively easily as compared to like, we've got a tap room in Northern California and we've got one in Southern California. You'll probably get to one, maybe. So it's cool to have unified design elements. That's awesome. I don't want to take too much more of your time, so I feel like let's lightning round a few tap rooms that you've visited or you'd like to. So a favorite brewery favorite brewery tap room that you visited. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but just one that you particularly love.
So one of my favorite breweries in the country is Crooked Stave. We were among the first doing sours in New York City, and that was kind of Crooked Stave's influence on me at the time. I pushed us for that, but we also, when we were first looking to build out and add a bigger brew house, when the CBC was in Denver the year that we were talking about this, and the manufacturer we were working with took us to a private event at Crooked Stave, and so kind of being in the space, with nobody else there, and or relatively nobody else there, was kind of this really cool experience for somebody brand new to the industry, and I was just thrilled with it. So those guys have a special spot for me, and they also have 2 different locations, and with a kind of different vibe and feel to the two, and so that was something else that we had considered when we were kind of building out the 2 spaces, and I guess Tired Hands similarly is a space that I had gone to in their original location when they were a very young brewery. And then had gone back to in the last couple of years when they opened their bigger space. I think it's the Funkatorium. But whatever the new big space is, is a very different from their kind of very small, intimate root space. Which so those are kind of 2 ones for me that I the privilege of being too very early on, and also kind of revisiting more frequently.
Nice. a tap room that you haven't been to that you'd really like to get to?
Ooh. Tap room I haven't been to.
Yeah, it could be in the boroughs, or it could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I don't, I travel a lot, but I don't get to go to like kind of the really big name places a whole lot. I'd like to go to the Russian River, kind of their original space. I think early on, like they were somebody who wasn't selling outside their immediate market, and were very small. But I went to a session at CBC where they're explaining like most of their day is explaining to people why they can't buy their beer. I'm like, I want to be that someday. But so that's kind of a really cool thing, and so those are really great people. I haven't been to Industrial Arts, which is something I guess closer to home here.
Let's make a
really
group trip once they let us out of the house. Yeah. Let's do a little group trip to Industrial Arts.
Yeah, no, I'd love to get out there.
And it's not far. It's maybe like 40 minutes north of the city for at least.
I know, and I really have no excuse. I just haven't been there, and I need to get up to see that.
You're a busy fella. Cool. So how about just a favorite communal beer, or it could be a style or a specific beer that you dig right now. It could be a Big aLICe beer, it could be a non-Big aLICe beer that you think is really good for drinking together with other humans.
I think every beer has its place, and there's the joke: are you drinking to remember or drinking to forget? But if you're drinking to hang out, I think anything lighter, sessionable, is a great beer. Probably the beer I drink most often of ours is our lemongrass Kolsch.
Yeah.
But I do find like not everybody has a Kolsch, but I find when they are available, I'd like to drink them. Because it's a hybrid. It's an ale that ferments like a lager and drinks like one. So it's something that if you're going to be kind of hanging out, having a session with friends, it's light, it's easy drinking, and something you drink a lot of, and have it not ruin your night.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, it's Kolsch is great because a lot of us, I think, are drawn to the flavor, the flavor possibility of ales, but we realize eventually, you can't drink a ton of them without really breaking the bank. So Kolsch is.
I think most in the industry, we find we're all drinking, pilsners and lagers,
yeah.
But that's just where we're at in our journey. I feel like we're very seldom aligned with our customer base, who is still chasing whatever flavor profile that's really exciting to them, and we all have them, and like I said, every beer has its place, and I if I had to pick a second favorite style, it would probably be a barley wine, but it's not something you can drink a lot of or drink often because I can't do
often,
that.
Yeah. Has Big aLICe brewed barley wine before?
So we did a barrel-aged barley wine that we released, I think, about a year ago. But we don't do a lot of them, and I think the last beer I may have brewed before John became head brewer for us was actually I did a party guide, which is kind of something I'd wanted to do for years. That we did for our state malt and state hop here, the Beer Week a few years ago. So we did a big beer and a small beer. And we named them Biggie and Smalls, and so Biggie was a barley wine, and Smalls was a table beer. So,
yeah, I was going to mention
two beers out of the same mash. Yeah.
That's cool. I was going to mention Portugal because I had a really great Portugal beer from Hermit Thrush, and that's how I learned about the style. Yeah. Basically, like you take the remaining works and you do something with it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I read
you get a 3% beer maybe. It's fabulous.
Yeah, no, that's
a lot of character.
Such a cool thing, and especially if you're, we try to do a lot with sustainability and renewable resources, and our brewery in Queens is powered 100% by wind power. We're actually registered with the EPA as a green partner. So we do a lot. That we can do it. And when I read about Party Guile, I'm like, all right, this is something I'd love for us to do more of. But it's just. Time-wise, it's very time-consuming, and having limited number of fermenters, it's just not something we can do a whole lot of. Yeah. But for a one-off kind of beer week exclusive, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. Tell me before we depart how we can get Big aLICe beer.
So we are like most of the breweries. We are doing takeout from our tap room in Queens. The Brooklyn location is temporarily closed during this time, but the Queens spot is open. We're open 7 days a week. Weekdays kind of 4 to 8. Saturday and Sunday we're open noon to 8. But we're also doing delivery via Caviar. You can find links to that on our social media, on our website, Facebook,
Great.
Instagram,
Cool.
all of the norms.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, I desperately miss you. I will hopefully see you, but this is good for my fix. I appreciate you hanging and chatting.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you and really everybody. There's a lot of people that it's been too long for all of us that we said earlier, we're all social beings, and this kind of scratches the itch, but we really need to get out and see each other and high five and hug it up.
Yeah. On the wellness front, I like to end all these videos by saying, enjoy your local products, support your local brewery, do it in moderation. If you want to have a discussion about the moderation of alcohol beverages, contact me, reach out to your local brewery. Everyone will be more than happy to have a chat with you and get social and come together. So thank you so much, Kyle. Yeah, this is awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, you too. Cheers.
We'll see you soon.